welcome to this, your weekly program that continues to provide that platform for our people to share that rich history of their communities and so enrich the lives of all of us. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Thanks for joining us. A very warm welcome to our viewers around the world, those of you who are joining us via the World Wide Web. We have entered the parish of St. Thomas and we are in the community of Bridgefield. In fact, the spotlight falls on Bridgefield this week. This program, in a sense, however, is a celebration of the unearthing of the material culture or a number of artifacts thanks to the good work of an elderly lady who is now part of the ages. The program begins, however, with historian Hal Ifill, who calls attention to the early history that started after 1841.
Bridgefield is the sister village to Rock Hall. Some of the early settlers were actually people from Mount Wilton Plantation who were legatees who had gotten money bequeathed to them from Reynold Allen Alcock. And around the same time that Rock Hall was established, Bridgefield was established, around 1841, because he was murdered in 1821 and the will was not probated until 20 years later, which would put us around 1841, and that was when the legatees got their money and they bought land. In the case of Bridgefield, 12 acres was alienated from the rugby plantation that was formerly called Social Hall, and this was bought by the legatees. Some of them got together and formed cooperative and then sold smaller amounts to other legatees. So that was how Bridgefield was established. And some of the names that you would see, like Jones, Clark, Coulters, some names that you see in Rock Hall, you will see similar names in Bridgefield, Maynard. So there's a nexus between the Rock Hall village and Bridgefield. Bridgefield was just a smaller village, about 12 acres, which the land was scattered, and the legatees bought that land. And this gave them a kind of, not absolute independence, but they had a greater independence than the average person, because they would have had their own land and they would be able to work that land and be able to sell the produce, and it gave them a greater freedom.
That was the history after 1841. We have unearthed material evidence that show that there was an existence here prior to all of that. In fact, there was a family or a number of people who occupied this space. And thanks to the tenacity, the dedication and the effort of this wonderful elderly lady and her family, we have that here for you. Who was this lady?
She was one of my informants. She is the grandmother of our songbird, Paula Hinds, and she was very proud of her name.
Her name was Augusta Nordica Mafeda Hurley, a mouthful. But she would have worked at Mount Wilton. She was responsible for lighting the light, and we only found out. She would tell you, but she still held back on some stuff. So in her latter days before she would say light, and we never knew what I meant. Then we said, she's probably remembering lighting the light at Mount Wilton and stuff like that. So she was like the wealth of knowledge. She was also a midwife. She would have gone all through Barbados, cutting nipple strings and birthing babies and stuff like that. So when she died, she was not a national hero, but to me, this woman at 94 represented the I'm every woman.
She told me she was one of the early residents of Bridgefield. Bridgefield was referred to as Bloodfield.
The whole Bridgefield area. My granny spoke of it being called Bloodfield.
They knew there was some story about the killing of the white man and the money that they got and the purchase of the land. When I heard the name Bloodfield, I thought it was because of the probably fighting and so on that went on. But this Bloodfield is associated with the early settlers who came here out of the same Mount Wilton. So you see, there's a lot in the name.
As children running around, we would have seen lots of graves run around unhappy because it was never a scary place. So people say, "Ooh, it's spooky." Now it was never spooky. We would run and hop and skip.
The same lady, Augusta Nordica Federbrow, where she lived is possibly where some of the early settlers lived. I'll tell you why I say that. Because there are some things that Paula collected which would suggest to me that people lived in that area.
Some of the pieces, Sherwood, I would have found on this property here, which has been in my family for, I'm 51 now, and my granny was 95. So you know how long we've been living here. So I would have found lead pipes, the lead pencils, sorry, not lead pipe. I'm probably hungry by now. But lead pencils. Here is what a lead pencil looks like. The one I had found was perfect. It had the point and everything, but this is like half of a lead pencil. I found some slate. I found some bullets, believe it or not. You know, like the musket shots. Found some of those musket balls. I put them in the plastic to help preserve them. You would see them in varying sizes if you want me to put them down so you can see them better. Or I can take them out, because then you will get a better idea of them. And they're quite weighty. So imagine being shot with one of these. It would pierce you. And if you watch The Patriot, you could only load one of these in the gun at one time. So that's the biggest one I found. This one was the smallest one that I found. And with iron, you have to be careful, because if the oxygen gets to it, this one is losing its shape, because I'm trying to preserve them by putting them in a non-oxygen area. So sometimes I squeeze out all the air and put it back up as soon as possible. This is a piece of a gun that I found. Quite weighty. Suggestive of somebody owning a pistol. I can tell you that no one in my family had owned a pistol. They call it the Balamine era pottery. There's some pieces of pottery that I found, because I would have spoken to the guy who would have done the mitzvah in Barbados. He was one of the originals who worked on it originally. So I went to him and asked him, "Excuse me, sir," very pleasant young man he was. I said, "So you think this is something I found?" And he said, "Wow, that piece of pottery is cool. It goes back to the 15th century. Seriously, 15? That means it's 14 something, but Barbadian history comes up 16 something, 17 something, but you don't go so far back." So I said, hold on, I'm on to something. So I did a bit of gardening. So as I garden, I would find these pieces. So I just start categorizing them and putting them up and stuff like that. I would have found some arrowheads dating back to or either Caribs or Arawaks ancestry. I even found some tools, Sharon, which is cool. Because when I saw them and I held them in my hand, I said, wait, this look like something you would kind of found. And then I found the stone. And then they played a reenact. I said, yes, boy, this probably was the hammer that they did pounding those shells with to get out the juicy meat and thing. But of course, they don't think we had a sea in St. Thomas. But all things given ain't that far from St. Thomas. I have a godson who walked to the beach from here. I thought he was a little bit crazy, but think of the day how my granny used to walk from St. Andrew to town. Get with me? So it ain't that far, ain't that far. Ain't that far-fetched. That man is strong and every man is strong. Run down there, come back. So, yet again, when I held it in my hand, and it has these shells, it suggests to me that it is some sort of weapon that they would have used. Also this, when you hold it, where the groove, automatic groove area, you have this area to hold it, you have this area to hold it. So, when you hold it in your hand, it feels comfortable to do. So I don't know if that was done to scratch, dig, or what, but just some interesting pieces that I found that comes to me like they were some sort of object to hold and do something with. If you look at it, to hold it. And maybe this one was for left hand, because this one here now is feeling better in my left hand. As some tool to work with. And these are just shells that I would have found on property. Suggestive that clams were here. Conchs. All that kind of stuff. Here is a wheel. Not sure if this was for baking cakes, but it's made from a chalky substance, but looks rocky. And I don't know if there's where they would have, if you imagine that it would have been bigger, that it was something to cook something on, probably in the sun, bake something on. Maybe when they pound their cassava, they could have baked it on that. Lots of possibilities to think on. Oh God, Sherwood, it's too numerous. Military buttons. One button I found had the 16th Regiment on it. It was very distinct. Unfortunately, that was one of the items I took to the museum and never got back. That was in 2009. I would have, and I have a note there with it because I'm very meticulous. 32 bags that I took to them. It was a time when they said, "Come, bring your items, and we will tell you what you found." Because they were all about helping the history of Barbados. So I went with my father. Look! I don't know what they are. I knew about some of them. So I gave them and I just left. When I went back, they just gave me one little bag with some clear pieces. I was like, so some of the pieces that I would have lost to the museum, I found back, but some I did not get back.
Buttons, military buttons.
So I'm so glad we were able to salvage. This is a piece that I was saying that suggests some sort of rank in some regiment. Like another pin that they would have had sewn onto their thing. When I found it, it was beat up like this. So I tried to clean it up as best as possible. And these are just buttons. They don't have much description. This piece is part of a shell casing for bullet. Yeah, but just buttons. And then this piece too. I know that this is part of a military uniform. I would have seen that on military uniforms. And I would have gone to the museum too to see how these soldiers would have dressed. And worshiping at BDF, I was privileged to go into the Sergeant's Hall and to observe how they would have worn, like the older guys in all the times, how they would have dressed and stuff. These are some keys that I thought were different. When I first found them, I said, they don't look like your average key that you would buy now in Barbados. Because when you look at this one, think of those old prison movies where you had like these little keys with the circle and the shape of it. It's saying old school key. It's not the key of now. Sherwood, I told you that I had plenty of stuff. You didn't believe me. You didn't looking for, and this is nothing close to what I do have. I'm just trying to find some, and this is another key here, which also suggests old school. So I'm thinking it could be a key to a gate. It could be a key to a hold where you have like storeroom key. When you look at the weight of it, it's very, very weighty. Very weighty key. We can even suggest that it might be, because I know they said in Shop Hill, where the signal station is, when I spoke to Dr. Lawfield, he was adamant that the regiment could not have been stationed here. So maybe this could have been a place where they held them. Those guys who were given a little bit of trouble will come down here and hold a couple of days. This could be the barracks for the bad boys, where they ended up. And this was something I found. I can't figure out what it is, but it is old school. I can't figure out how to put it. If it is this way, but I know it's in old school writing. Can't figure out the lettering, but as always, I would just file it away to somebody who's more knowledgeable.
And these artifacts tell the story of a life that existed here, a life which has not yet been written about. The challenge is thrown out to students of history or anyone with an interest in Barbadian history to conduct the necessary research and write that which has not yet been written.
Perfume bottles. There are a number of things which she collected, and she still has them. And that would suggest to me that people of some means lived in that area.
Not that the person's living on it are not quality, but just suggesting that some hierarchy was in close proximity. This is a shoe, the shoe tongue we call it, yeah. So this is a metal shoe tongue, really unique one. And you can tell by the aging of the metal that it's quite old. Something that I found, and it suggested that there could be a school or was a school. This is the top of it. You can tell that it's really old, so you have to handle it with care, that the iron. But the object, it could have been a bell. If my other suggestion goes real true, that there was some sort of military camp here. I could see them hitting the bell and telling them come for dinner. If you think of the old westerns, they had a little thing like this that you would tinker it. But it could have been a school bell, or it could have, because you see the attachment there to hang it somewhere. This is where I am saying that finding these is one of the reasons why, and I'm going to put them here. I'm thinking that some sort of military base was on this property here in Bridgefield. It's a whole bunch of these R's that I found, and I'm still finding them as of today. And if you look at them, at first I thought it was a printery, but then I said a printery with only R's. Probably not making sense. But then I thought of how the military wear their stuff, and I'm thinking that they would have been placed on the shoulders. Right there, how like we have like our guys for HM, Her Majesty Prison, Royal Regiment, indicative of that. So that's what, because there are too many R's, there's no justification having a printer with. And I've never found another letter, just R's, just R's, R's, R's. So that is what brought that on. I'm going to show you some gambling chips. Now this is how the men in the day would gamble. They would get pottery like this, turn it into your chip. So I'm just going to put them there to show you that they had a system going. So then you will find a finer piece of pottery. Not sure if that meant more money. Look, this one. Not sure if they would break up the. This one here now is made out of lead or iron or something. But they're all gambling chips. And then these two are really small. Not sure if they're gambling chips. They're fitting the circular circumference going on, but I'm not sure if those could be coins or something. But I put them in the gambling chips by suggesting that that's what they are. So let me just get rid of these. And you may ask how I knew to do this labeling. I will tell you, it's just God who instructed. So I just followed his instructions and just did them. This is the one that was quite interesting. I label it wedding ring ? If you look at it, it's a complete circle, and as you look at it, it suggests that it could possibly have been a wedding ring. If you look at the break that's right there, it could have been a wedding ring, just a basic simple wedding ring. Where
on that site there was a tombstone. I remember as a boy walking across this tombstone, and most of us my age and all that knew that this tombstone existed.
The action being that they found the grave, the museum would have taken most of the slab away, but we do have a piece of it that I'm going to show you that my brother kept as in posterity. Okay, we have a piece of it, they can't deny that it exists. The stone I told you that I gave was in this area here. Right here. Along here. Might be others too. It was a graveyard. Our family we just planted stuff, but never really did any major development. But it's right, because I just came out the house in the morning and just walked here, and I saw this block. I said, wait, this are the blocks, like the walking blocks. I said, what's this thing? And then when I cleaned it up, I said, wait, there. I said, this old English boy, what's this? Is a grave thing?
Herein lies the body of Lieutenant Colonel Humphrey Hook, Joan Hook, and Captain John Ryder, and Margaret Lillington. Margaret Lillington was the wife of George Lillington, and Lillington was actually president of the Legislative Council, and he would be quote-unquote like what we would call a governor at the time. And they lived, and we believe they had lived in that area. We actually found part of the rail that you would put up on a tomb, the ironwork, and she actually found part of that.
Yeah, and like the grave rails I would have found along here. Oh, we get to the spooky part. So this would be, if you can remember going to the cemetery and looking, it's either part of a grave rail, or if you look at the latch, it could be a hook for the latch to go over. So when I first saw it, I said it could be a grave rail, but this part right here and here suggests a mechanism of going up and coming down and latching like a latch, but possibly a gate or something. But then we get to the actual rail. So this one, decorative again. So these are the pieces that I found that I was convinced that, because there's some very and usually persons of status wouldn't just have a plain grave rail. They would tend to stick to their quarter arms, and if you look at it, you can see the very decorative detail that's going on in these rails, suggestive that it could have been part of a fencing, part of a main gate, or it could have been part of a grave, the area that surrounds the grave. And I have lots of these pieces that suggest that, yet again, the detail that is going into the rails. And when I go to funerals and I look at graves, the older ones, I see stuff like this. So that's what tickled me that it could be. This is an Ooh, this is another piece that has started to separate, but ooh, hold together, darling. Right, but you can still see the detail that's there. It's starting to oxidize, so the iron will start to disintegrate. So you try where as possible to preserve it. This one here. And I haven't been at these for so long, so they've been in my bedroom in a container for the longest of whiles. And that's another one. And again, you can see the detail that is matching by all the other pieces that you would have seen. That one is a beauty too. Same coat of arms, same structure going on again. So that's why he said they're either part of a gate or a grave rail.
So there is, as I said, some early history, or history which predates the actual settlement of Bridgefield.
The evidence of that is seen through the material culture, aspects of social reality grounded in the objects and architecture that surround Paula and her family, and which she continues to unearth. The challenge is now thrown out to anyone or an organization to work with Paula and bring life to these artifacts, and so tell the story of a social space that existed here in Bridgefield prior to the establishment of the Free Village in 1841. Do join us next week at the same time as we continue this discussion. In the meantime, be good to yourself and look out for the interests of your neighbours. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Every blessing.